Hi everybody, welcome back. This is instructor Phil Dimitriata. So what we're going to do, this is just going to be a really short demo, and I want to talk a little bit about our next topic and subject matter for the Basic Drawing for Entertainment Arts class. I'm going to try to break up a couple lectures over time, but I know for some of you, you're newbies at understanding and getting involved with the figure. Okay, so what we're going to do is basically what I decided to do and what I decided to change in part of this class is that after last summer, I was talking to Brian Murray, Marshall Vandruff, and another instructor, James Dowdles, here at school. And Brian Murray is one of our awesome alumni who was actually here when he was 18. Okay, studied a bunch of classes. He's gone out since then. He works as a storyboard artist. And what's really cool is he literally just finished working on a film with Steven Spielberg. And if that's not cool, I don't know what else is cool. The fact that I couldn't imagine sitting in a room with Steven Spielberg and you're putting your drawings in front of him, getting his feedback, okay? A legendary, filmmaker who's made some just incredible movies, knows a ton about composition and storytelling, right? Can you imagine that? I would almost lock up and be like, dude, you made Indiana Jones and you made Schindler's List and you made all these incredible movies, like everything you touch turns to gold. How is that possible? And you went to Cal State Long Beach because, I don't want to get into too many specifics, but he did go to Long Beach because he was denied from USC. And then after he went to Long Beach and got out, later on when he became famous, USC was like, oh my God, we're sorry. We're going to give you an honorary degree and we want you to be part of our film program because he became famous. And then he sort of had nothing else to do with Cal State Long Beach anymore. And anyway, it's a fascinating story, but I want to leave you with something there in this class. I mean, for a lot of you, this is a basic drawing class focusing with entertainment arts. In entertainment arts, one of the most important things you're going to have to do is this right here. You're going to have to be able to draw the figure, and that's why we're going to start with this little wooden mannequin. Okay. Some of you don't know anything about perspective. Okay, we've talked briefly about perspective. In the beginning of the semester, I talked a little bit about understanding the placement of people, and I mentioned that this is a topic we're going to cover where we're going to understand a little bit more about the human form. Okay, now when we talk about the human form, okay, let me go back to my little lecture here. There's a couple things that I need to bring up to you because I want you to understand our approach, and I want you to understand sort of a finished approach of how people work. Okay, I'm missing a folder. Let me see here. Oops, there it is. I had a folder here. Okay, here's the problem with figure drawing. Okay, it's not a problem, it's just a different approach. In a majority of institutions, the human figure has been seen as something that has to be learned. It is one of the hardest things to learn. Why? Well, let me just looking at a couple pieces here, I'll explain why. Number one, you have proportion. Number two, you have movement and gesture in the form. Number three, you have the osteology, which is the bone structure, right? Number four, which technically should be number one, is anatomy. Anatomy is really, really difficult because now you have a human form that's moving and in pose, okay, and the muscles react and de-react at different rates. In fact, most of our body is comprised on a reaction and then a counteraction to bring it back into place, okay? For example, I'm going to hold my arm up here. You can't see this on the screen, but I'm touching my bicep right here, okay? My bicep muscle allows me to bring my arm down. Excuse me, what am I saying? Touching back here to my tricep, and I'm talking about my bicep. Okay, my tricep back here allows me to pull my arm down, and then my bicep that's right here allows me to bring it forward. So one is the key count, one is the key action, one is the counter action. Everything is set up on our body to work like that. We have muscles that open up part of our body. We have muscles that close part of our body. When we walk, you have a tibialis anticus, which is this muscle right here under your kneecap. If you pull your foot up, you'll see this little ball right here, and that's because it's tensing, and it goes down to the front here, and that pulls your leg up. And then as you push your leg down, you're actually using part of your calf muscle to then push your foot back down, okay? So the importance of that is if you go to the gym or you work out or you do anything like that, there's a difference in the way the human body works in terms of its counteractions. Now, in actions, one of the things that happen is in the world of art and fine art is people spend their lifetime studying the human figure. They get involved into the human figure, and one of the things that's really, really difficult to do is how do you go into the human figure and really learn to master it? There's all kinds of different approaches. Well, for us in entertainment, okay, it's not a bad thing to sit and do countless hours of study, okay, and to also sit and to observe the human form in motion and in rest and in movement, okay? Now that's where figure drawing comes in. Now this isn't really a figure drawing class. My thing about the way I work is what happens when you don't have a model in front of you, okay? What happens when you have to show two people about to get in a fight and you don't have the ability to stage two people, okay? So I want you to understand there's a vested difference of how the understanding of the figure works, how it applies into painting, how it applies into figure drawing classes, okay? There's an importance there that exists, okay? For us, though, part of that importance right now, we don't need part of that model if you follow my sort of approach, okay? So what my approach is this, okay? Is that you can take these classes, and a lot of students here have taken these classes, right? And what sucks sometimes is you get in a class, when I was a student, I get in a figure drawing class where we have a model and a pose and you have 2 hours to draw that pose, okay? But then I remember when I started working, I started working as an environment designer, and once I was given a bunch of freelance to do some storyboard cleanup. So I had a bunch of rough drawings and I had to draw people. It was a chase sequence. It was an animated chase sequence, right? What happened is I was literally, the way I had been taught was, well, I need to pose a model. I need to look at something. How do I draw that, okay? One of the things that happens in figure drawing is that, yeah, this is great. If you want to spend time, you take an anatomy class, okay, you learn all the different muscle structures, the osteology, the bone structures. You learn the 7 bony landmarks of the body. You learned how the muscles are acting, counteracting. You learn the difference between muscles on skinny people, overweight people, small people, wide people, all different types of people and form, people of different nationalities, okay? People that might even have a darker color of skin, okay? Because when someone has darker colored skin, it allows you to see the anatomy a little bit more, and that's the same thing. That's the same principle as having a black car. If you have a car that's a dark color, you can see the scratches and the dings in it, because light reflects quicker, okay? So if you have somebody that is pale white and they're from Sweden and they're posing and they're really buff, you might not see as much as the muscular anatomy as if you have somebody that might be from South America or somebody that might be African American or so on. You see the differences, okay? So there's a huge undertaking there to understanding anatomy. This is not what part of our approach is, okay? So what part of our approach is we need to understand this guy. We need to understand his proportions, and then we have to understand how to draw this gentleman out of our head, okay, eventually from multiple angles of view, meaning that we have now inserted a horizon line. Once we have inserted a horizon line into a scene, that is where it's changing, because now we are dictating a particular perspective, okay? All right, so we're going to come back to this guy in a minute, and what I want to do is I want to come over here and I want to show you. Let's take a moment and I want to watch. This is Brian Murray. It's one of our instructors here, right? He has some storyboards up here, okay? And I want you to take a look. And this one's about, let's take a look at this. And I want to give you an idea of what exactly a storyboard artist is doing and what is the importance of the figure. So before I go to this, I just wanted to leave you with that common note, which is you can't always pose a model. However, though, do you see your little wooden buddy in front of you? If you learn to draw that mannequin and you learn to understand the shapes of him, and you basically are introducing yourself to a foundational step of drawing, which is you have the ability to draw the human figure out of your brain at any time and be able to pose it inside an action sequence, okay? That's huge. A lot of people can't do that, all right? Oh, Brian, the video's not, maybe I had to take it down. All right, that one was down. Here's another one that he worked on. This one's up. Okay, so let me record it. Let's show it to you. See if there's sound on it here. By the way, these are 3D Maya roughs, known as previs. Look, mannequin people everywhere.
Keeping up horse close. That's the most of the yeoman. Close my ass. We get a taste of our guns, it'll be the last we'll see of them.
More mannequin people running.
That's deep. That's deep. So many. Counter! Archers up! Archers hold! Archers hold! Fire! We vanished. Of course they vanished. We beat those bloody savages. We're free! We did it! We did it!
Alton, could it be they're gone for good?
Of course they won't be back. We taught them. Open the gates! Hurry! Gates opening now! Thank you, Mr. You don't need to thank me. You can thank him.
I'm going to pause right there for a second because one of the things I want to point out to you so that I didn't mention in the beginning is you guys are watching this and you're getting tied into the sequence, okay? So this is what we call a sequence where you get a script handed to you and there's a dedicated action for something that's going to take place. The responsibility of the board artist, and that would be a lot of you guys have this opportunity to become board artists, right? Is you have to go in there and you have to be able to draw the actions of the people that are adhering to the script, okay? One of the things you're going to notice in here is you notice the quick changing of perspectives. So at one point, the horizon line's down low, people are attacking because that's really common to have a one-point perspective shot. In this shot right here, we were down low and we're looking up at a guy up on a wall. Do you see that? So one of the reasons why I'm showing this to you is I want you to understand that you're not always going to have the figure available to you. You're not going to be able to sit there and go, oh, wait a minute, hey, and call your brother and go, hey, dude, can you put that like Indian costume you have on and grab a spear and stand on the wall? Just go stand on the fence. Let me get down low and take a picture of you. That's not going to be an option. Okay, so what happens, so I could keep playing the rest of this, but this is basically a mix. This is what we call, it's a previs animation. And what they do with a lot of these is this is when you take storyboarding, you take the ability to work in Maya, you combine them together, and you make, there are people that do this for a living. Okay, a lot of people here in LA that do this. They do this for commercials. They do it for movies. They do it for games. It's a legitimate way to make a living because you're working as a storyboard artist. And by the way, it pays very well. Okay, you're working as a storyboard artist and you're designing a sequence in stories to film, movies, commercials, games, you name it, right? And oops, what happened there? I touched the Cintiq, and I'm not getting any image on my Cintiq. I don't know why. And it jumped over to here. Let me restart the Cintiq. Hold on there. I think I lost part of the... Ooh, what happened? Did anyone see what happened? I just was talking there and lost part of it. Anyway, so point being, I wanted you to take a look at that really quick, all right? You can watch, Brian did all the storyboards. So if you look at this, if you want to go to Brian's site, it's Adobe One, okay? Storyboards.blogspot, or you could type in Brian Murray and it'll take you right there. So look, this is Renoki. This is a movie. Brian did a bunch of the storyboards, and then it was directed by Rob Fast and Fierce Cohen, starring Cameron Murray, Rob Cohen. Anyway, so one of the Cohen brothers or something, right? So it's pretty cool, right? You get to see this whole thing. I mean, we could watch the rest of it, but I want to get to the lecture. I don't want to go too long, okay? But what I wanted to do is I wanted to expose you when you start looking at, oh, come on, I keep hitting the wrong buttons today. It's not my day today. Close. I don't want any of this LA Times stuff. Oh, come on. So, there's a scene. Here it is. Here's some more of the board panels that have been done by Brian Murray for movies. Okay, so I just wanted to show you this because you're not always working in, that was really nice because that's an animatic that's placed together with. So let me explain what an animatic is, right? So that's a storyboard sequence placed together with Maya Previs, and they bring all this together with sound and everything to what we call an animatic. The purpose of that is before they go make the movie, they do that on a real rough phase, okay? Same thing with here. You can take every one of these drawings that are here, and if you follow the sequence, it tells you what's about to happen. It's a death trap that's set up, and then as the person walks in, it triggers something, and then something happens, and this person gets killed. Something drops down from the ceiling, and it has something to do with the movie. So it's not that Brian's wanting to run around and kill everybody. It's just part of the script that you get handed, okay? So the reason why I'm showing you this is because you guys are drawing, most of you are what I call it one frame right now. You're drawing a character in movement, and you're going to be sketching your mannequin. You're going to draw them as one position. What you can think about doing in your drawing with your mannequin is what we're going to do is we're going to spend the rest of today just drawing them in multiple poses. But eventually, into next week, you're going to get to the point where you should be able to draw this guy from your memory, from your imagination. Then what I might do is I might give you a sequence to think about. Like, for example, this was a common film assignment that was given at USC. And it was a beginning and an outcome. A student, an individual, a young man, is going to get on his bicycle. He's going to ride down the street, and he's going to ride his bicycle into a manhole that's been removed, and then fall down and crash and eat it. Okay? So someone removed a manhole, from the street, and that's going to happen. How would you stage that? So you might show the boy walking to his bike, right? Getting on his bike. But then when he's riding on the street, is he like messing with his backpack? Maybe he's looking at his phone. Maybe he's distracted. Maybe there's warning signs. It's, men at work and he doesn't see those. Maybe there's no warning signs. Maybe he's riding along. Is it an upshot where we're down low and looking up? Or is it a bird's eye view where a bird's like behind him and there's a camera or a crane up above him? We show him riding down the street. Or maybe you're showing him at his point of view of him on the handlebars riding like this. And he's looking over, maybe sees his neighbor and sort of waves to her. I'm going to give you a couple options to do that if you like. If not, we can just work on drawing the mannequin. But the point is to get involved with staging and being able to draw the human figure at multiple, multiple points of views from different vanishing points, okay? Give me a second here. I don't know what is going on right now, but I'm going to stop the recorder for just a second. My Cintiq isn't working, and I'm getting this weird menu up here. And I don't know why it's doing this, so there, it went away for a minute. I'll work on the Cintiq in a second then. So look, it's great to see stuff like this, and it's great that you have the ability to go in and look at like Brian Murray's work. Here's some other, this was another project that he was working on. So now I want you to realize hunter-killer storyboards, okay? When they make movies, a lot of times they put a fake name, hunter-killer. And then they might change it to, you know, the Russian G5 or something, right? Because there's a new sub called the G5. So they do that all the time in the movie industry. They might come up with a fake name or whatever, right? Now, some of you need to remember too that it takes years for stuff to be produced. So Brian worked on this back in 2015, okay? Numerous things could have happened. The story could have been shelved, okay? It could have been redone. They could have gotten rid of the director because the director was, you know, I don't know, doing too many drugs and wasn't directing, and they decided to bring in another director. That happens all the time. They could have had a visual effects company that was taking the animatics here and getting ready to go into 3D and start filming the sequences, and then they didn't like that company. They folded. They ended up hiring another company. Stuff like that happens in movie productions all the time, okay? So when we're looking at this, this is pretty cool because you get a chance. Let me see if I can click through these. Excellent. I was hoping they wouldn't jump through. So look at the story, right? Now, there might not be any people in here, but here's a submarine. And then right here come up the missiles, right? And you're looking at it. They're shooting away. They're coming here. The sub's passing by. And we just follow part of the sequence. So this is just a rough board form that hasn't been placed into animatic form yet. So one of the differences is that here's a good example that you guys get to look at in terms of the drawing and seeing what's happening. Look at the multiple views, you'll notice, right? 1 minute you're looking down, 1 minute you're looking up, okay? We see the sub traveling down, it hits the ground, it slides in, it starts to break apart into pieces. Here's a helicopter right there that looks like it's coming down, okay? Right here, there's a reconnaissance. So look at the people in there. So one of the things you're going to notice is that you don't always have to be the most amazing draftsman in terms of drawing people, but you do have to have the understanding of being able to draw people in the right perspective that fits to their environment. That is key, okay? That's the one thing that I feel does not get communicated inside figure drawing classes, is that you're sitting there and no one, when I took figure drawing, and still to this day, this is why we have our figure drawing meetings, which I'll put on the very end of this as well on Fridays here, is so we can draw the models the way we want to and the way the poses that we like, and there's a huge benefit there for you, okay? You can't sit in a figure drawing class. How many people in here have had figure drawing, okay? Maybe they talked a little bit about the horizon line, right? Not even that? Okay. So what do you talk about? You talk about placing a human figure in front of you on a raised pedestal surface, right? And they sit there and you spend the whole entire semester copying different individuals in the same pose at the same perspective. You see what the problem is with that? Is it's not teaching you anything about understanding how to draw the human form and motion and so on. So speaking of that, this summer, I'm getting together with Marshall and Brian, and I just sent them all an email last night. We're writing 2 to 3 direct classes that are relative towards. I teach the class in applied perspective. I teach environment design. The one class that we don't have here is a class where you sit and you have to draw people and animals in staging scenarios with different vanishing points, which is a precursor drawing to storyboarding. Brian is a great storyboard artist, and he understands how to cut and show what scenes and where and explain what's happening, okay? So, however, though, that's not part of my strengths. One of the things I did in the industry was I did a little bit of previs work because I was a Maya modeler. I would create environments and take a camera and I would set up the key action scenes and sequences of what was going to happen from beginning until end. I would give that to board guys, sometimes go in there with Photoshop, indicate where light would be coming from. I would help them plan out the scenes of what was going to happen, which is very similar to that movie that we were just watching. We'll come back to that in a second. I just wanted to go through this because I want you to see the sketch of the people. So what I want you to think about from this point on is where's the horizon line whenever you're drawing the human figure, okay? Are you trying to give me the feel that we're looking down on the human figure? Where's that horizon line going to be, okay? When we're looking at these guys here, okay, I can see up underneath that, the top right there. Do you see that? That means there's going to be a horizon line about right here. Do you see that? Inside the frame. So as I go along these action sequences, okay, from Brian's boards, where's the horizon line? Okay, so if I'm looking at here, I can't see on top of this. I can't see underneath it. My horizon line's right about there. That's usually a pretty safe place for storytelling for it to be. But what happens when we change a scene? Let's see here if he has a scene change. There we go. And now we're looking up at people. Where's my horizon line now? These are two guys that are jumping in the water, right? So my horizon line is way up here. Do you see that? We're looking at them. You can't ask your friend or your buddy to jump in the water so you can take a picture of them, can you? No. But what you can do is you can draw your little mannequin in perspective at a tilted view as long as you understand where the horizon line is and you understand what is happening inside that pose. Okay? Look, that's a down shot. That means we're up in the sky looking downward on a sub, and then we're going to see missiles launching up towards us. Okay? Great shot, by the way. There's 53 frames there. You guys can visit his website. You can check those out, right? Absolutely beautiful work. Let's see what else Brian has up here. He always has good stuff, okay? Let me come back here. And too bad that video's, I wonder if you had to take it down. I wanted to see that. This looks like it was a commercial that he worked on, Louis Vuitton, okay? So, you know, you have the availability and the option as a board artist to work on multiple functions. So again, let me come back to this stuff now, right? And I did find another gentleman here. I was coming across some other boards. Okay, I was just looking around and looking at some. What I don't like, he doesn't have it set up so you can click through and go through a lot of the variants. But what I wanted to show you here is when you're looking at some of these people, look at how rough they are drawn. Okay, do you see that? See how rough they are? That's okay to be rough like that, as long as you have the understanding of the human form. So this is the one thing that no one ever teaches you in figure drawing. Our goal right now over the next couple weeks in drawing this wooden mannequin, the human figure, is not to have a tremendous amount of detail. It is to be rough and fast, to understand shape and form, and most importantly, understand its relationship to a horizon line and what we call an angle of view. That is the key difference that sets us out, okay? I'm going to minimize this window now, and let me show you a couple samples. Okay, so do you see the difference then between this? This is sitting there for hours and hours and contemplating color theory you're going to use. This is rendering and looking at all the muscles. You know, this is looking at the light hitting the figure. This is great. It's very difficult to do, and it's another part of learning. But to me, this isn't what I want to get you into right now. And this is, to me, what is part of the problem with figure drawing. Is a lot of instructors don't really talk about the existence of the human form as it relates to its basics in terms of gesture and motion and construction. So let me show you a couple examples of what we want to get into. This is what we want, okay? This is when you can look at, and by the way, these studies right here, they're usually about 1.5 inches high. When I go to figure drawing meetings, I draw like this in my sketchbook. I keep my drawings very small. The other thing that drives me nuts, what size do you usually draw the human figure at when you're in a figure drawing class? 18 by 24. It's freaking huge. It's like this giant newsprint pad, and you're drawing one figure. I'm like, are you insane that you're going to teach kids how to draw like that? It's too much. This is what you have to do. Okay. So in a minute, I'm going to talk about something and talk about a line of action in just a second. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to be able to think about the proportions of the figure and how the figure is working and how it's moving. That's why you have that mannequin in front of you. It's so you can bend it, contort it, and since it's in front of you, you get to dictate where its horizon line is. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to see if I had a couple empty boxes. I'm going to see if I can get some more. Some of you have some bags. And some of you might go home, right? You can start placing your mannequin on different levels and draw your horizon line, then go in and draw your mannequin. Does that make sense? You are training yourself how to understand the proportion and how to understand the basic shapes of the human figures at different points of view. By doing that, eventually you will get to this. Well, you will be able to start posing the character, okay? And one way that we can pose the character is that we can go to like Target, and you see somebody at Target who's like checking out. It's one of the places I go sketch at all the time. Why? Targets always have a little place on the left side where we can get coffee or a Slurpee right at the opening, and I could sit there and draw people walking in and yelling at their kids and throwing stuff in a basket, and it's a great place to draw, okay? But see, this is huge right here, okay? This is what we're getting into, is that if you want to stylize your proportions, go ahead. If you decide not to draw the round, excuse me for a minute, let me go back here. If you decide that you don't, what happened to that image? Come back up. Oh, it's down there. If you decide that you want to draw the round shoulder attached, so you don't want to just draw the round ball there and you want to come in and draw it separately where it attaches in one arm, that's totally fine. I'm fine with that. You know, you can get to that a little bit later. And actually what happens when I did this assignment, because I did this back in the day, and I got to give credit where it was due, I learned a tremendous amount from drawing the human figure from Don Lagerberg. And he had made us do this. He was an instructor at Cal State Fullerton. I was sitting in class with Justin Sweet, and we spent a tremendous amount of time having to draw our mannequins over and over and over and over. And I'm talking pages. I'm talking 15, 20 pages a week, and doing that for like 6, 7, 8 weeks. We're down to 5 weeks left in this class, maybe at 4 after this. So I'm trying to incorporate this to you, but I want you to get the understanding that you have the ability to draw the human form in movement, okay? You have the ability to draw it from your imagination, okay? But you have to apply a couple key steps. And let me show you what those key steps are. Number one, you see this line of action in there? That line right there? We call that a line of action. So whenever you're drawing something, what you want to do is you want to look at the longest point from the head and what is the longest line that comes down on the body. So for example, look at my pose right now. I'm putting the leg out. The longest line of action now is from the back of my head coming over, going down the back of the leg right there. Do you see that? Okay. By doing that, by getting the line of action in there first off the head ball, then you come back in and then you start to fill in these proportions, okay? And the great thing about the wood mannequin is we're going to start with, I'm holding my mannequin right here to show you. Okay, you can hear him right here, right? What are the largest proportions that you see? We start with the head, we start with the chest, and then we start with the pelvic area, right? Then you come in, you put the little circle in between there. Those are the first things you sketch, okay? The appendages, the arms and the legs, okay, they're developed off of a branching structure like in nature, like everything. Like in a tree, you have the core key shapes. You never start your drawing with an arm. Never start your drawing with a leg. So if you follow these steps, you'll be able to knock out your mannequin very quickly. Okay, I'm going to go over the steps in a minute for you because I'm going to draw on the Cintiq in a second here. Okay, so the first thing we do is we start with the head ball shape. We look for a dedicated line of action. We come in, we put the chest, and we put the pelvics. Okay, after that, then we go into the arms. Okay, the arms and the legs, the appendages of the body, are always secondary. They're not a key element. Okay, and if you do this, you will be able to get to the point where you can start sketching the human figure outside of looking at something. You just sit. I do it all the time. I have a visual memory that's been collected from years of drawing, and I just sit with my sketchbook sometimes. I see somebody walk by, I look at them, and I draw them, but then they're gone, so I draw them from my memory, and I draw them from my knowledge of understanding shapes and proportions in relationship into the perspective world that I am looking at. That is key right there. That is the one thing that you have to do. Okay? All right, give me 1 second here. What I was going to do next is I have some samples here of the human figures. I have models here. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what is happening in there, what are the proportions that are happening, and then I wanted to introduce you guys to a really wonderful site, okay, that you can work from at home if you don't have access to models, okay? And then you have two approaches that you can do. One is that you can pose your mannequin directly in front of you and start to draw it. Number two is that you can go get reference like this, and you can look at the reference of people sitting and squatting, and then when looking at this, and here's the key, and this is the part I was going to do, is I'm going to do a draw over for you, okay? I want you to lose the detail. I don't want you to look at the face. I don't want you to look at his fingers. I don't want you to look at his underwear or his hair. We're going to think about these as our little mannequin people. Okay? The first thing we look for is what? The horizon line. So we look in here and we ask, what can we see on top of? I can see on top of his leg, and I can see on top of his shoulders, okay? And I can see a little bit on top of his head right here. So now it gets tough with the human figure because technically his head is looking towards us, but his head's pointing down a little bit. So we have to use other elements to gear what we're looking towards, okay? Give me 1 second. I need to stop the recorder because I need to figure out why the Cintiq isn't on, and then I'll start doing a draw over on a couple of these elements here for you. All right, sorry about that. Had a little delay there for a minute. Ooh, how to get those funky lines in there? I don't know. Stop recording. All right, guys, sorry about that. We stopped for a minute. I was having a problem with the Cintiq. So here we are. So the first thing that I do whenever, the first thing I want you guys to do. So I'm going to make some rules here because I know what'll happen is I'll walk around and you guys will be drawing or breaking the legs off your mannequin, right? And then you need to stop and you have to ask yourself a couple base questions whenever you go to draw. Question number one, and that's what we're sort of doing by looking at these figures right here, okay? So what I did is I put up a bunch of images here. Here's image number one. So let's take a look at this guy. I doled him down a little bit. Let me bring him back up. So I'll just draw a red line on top so we can see. Where is our horizon line here? Okay. So what we want to do is we won't want to look at the details. We don't care about the muscle and anatomy. All we care about right now are proportions. If we have proportions, proportions are the successful guidance that get into gesture. It gets into all the other detail. Everything else we can add back onto this guy. We can add on detail, we can add on hair, long hair, a mask, we can add weaponry, any of that stuff, we can add drapery, all that stuff comes later, but without the proportion, it fades apart. So, looking at this guy and the fact that he's squatting, I'm going to throw the horizon line up about right here, okay? Because I'm basically looking down on top of everything. I can see on top of his legs and everything, okay? So, now, let's turn this guy off real quick, and then let's come back and let's take a look at the girl here. Can you imagine that as your crazy psychotic girlfriend? Okay, right? Who's mad at you because you came home late with dinner. So she grabbed her sword and her shield. Okay, so looking at this individual, okay, which is actually a great pose. All right, let's take a look at what now. Here's one of the hard things is that she's leaning forward towards us a little bit. Do you see that? Okay, but we can still see on top of her leg right here. Her leg's coming towards us, okay? But then we're looking up. You see how I can see a little bit under the chin there? Okay, so by looking at this, and if I look up towards about her chest level, her chest is coming a little bit towards us. So I'm going to say that the horizon line in this piece is probably somewhere about right here. Okay, that's going to be important to me. The reason why I'm saying that is because she's coming forward a little bit, leaning, so I'm getting a little bit more of the angle of her shoulders towards me. But to me, that would be about right. If she stood straight up, I would definitely be able to see fully under her chin. Right there, okay? All right, so next one, let's go look. We have this girl, okay? By the way, I don't have a thing for girls. I just picked random models, and this is what came up, all right? So I'm going to introduce you guys to a fantastic site in a couple minutes that has poses and models up there, and it's great. You can do men only, you can do women only, you can do different poses, and it will actually turn the poses for you and rotate them automatically so you sit and sketch. And I'll show you that site in a couple minutes. I do it all the time, okay? Now, this particular model, one of the things, looking at the way that she's standing, where is the placement of my horizon line? So when I'm looking over here, this is a tough one because, see, her body's pretty much straight, but I can see on top of the shoulders. Do you notice that? That's key for me. I can still see on top of this. But then I can see a little bit under the chin, but then I can't see on top of the head fully. So her horizon line, or the horizon line with this particular model, I'm going to say is somewhere about right there, okay, inside that figure. Okay, now what I'm going to do, that's step one. We always draw the horizon line. So when you guys are at home with your mannequin, I want you to break out and draw the mannequin away from this. Right now you're sitting looking at your mannequin and he's on the table. He's under your horizon line. That's okay. But go home where you have higher surfaces like a counter or maybe a shelf and start putting him on, or her, whatever you name your mannequin, okay? All right? One-armed, one-legged Sally, right? Okay, because Ray just broke the leg off of her. So anyway, so I want you to start posing that mannequin and looking, okay? Next thing, it's phase two. Okay, so let's start here. Let me dull down this photo. And this is why this is actually a great exercise for you guys to do to start with your figure drawing, is that you have a model first to guide you through. Okay, so I'm going to start with this guy. So first thing I'm going to do, step one was what? I'm going to write this on here. Let me add another layer, a layer right there. Step number one is we always place in our horizon line. Step number two now is we always start with the head ball. So I'm going to come up here. Now you'll notice one of the things I like about the mannequin, my old mannequin has sort of a rounded head ball shape, but what I like that they do is they bring the head down a little bit. You'll notice that the mannequins, see how they're a little bit long? The reason why they do that is it's, now, I mean, technically you could argue this and say, well, hey, it's a little distorted or whatever, but people have different shaped faces, so they're incorporating for the distance between the upper head ball to the nose down to the chin pretty much, okay? What I like is some of the new mannequins, you'll notice, has a little, do you guys have a little line down the middle? Some of them, they've changed over the years. Mine at home doesn't. It's just a rounded head. Some have a little cheek plane with a line down the middle. That line is key, because remember before when we were drawing, we talked about having a center line, right? So this guy's center line is coming at about there and going up about this way. Now, if you want to embellish a little bit, one of the things I do is I also throw on that side flat part of the skull, okay? Because I know you have this temple right here, and your temples are sort of flat to where the ear is, okay? That's just fill. Now, the next thing that we're going to do, so number one, the first thing that we do is we always start with the head ball shape. Right after the head ball shape is going to come our line of action. Okay, so the line of action in this particular character, now it's different because we're working from a photo versus when you guys are out drawing people, the same thing applies, it just applies it a different manner. Okay, so now if I come down from here, his line of action right now, but here's what's key to me, is I always draw sort of this base circle here, and you'll notice on your mannequins you have a circle at the body. Now, the reason why that circle is important to me is because the top of the head rotates over and around that circle. That circle never really changes. And to me, that circle that's right here that the head mounts to is sort of like the very back of it is where my line of action whips off of. Okay? So, line of action. Step number 4. After that line of action, we break in the core shapes of the body, which is going to be the chest. Okay? And then after that, it's going to be the pelvic or pelvis area. Okay, so here, if I come off of this, I have this line of action right now. That's pretty much his line. Sometimes, depending on the pose, I also add the appendages. So I might sketch into here, and then I might throw like a rough circle here. I throw a rough circle there, which represents the upper torso. The lower pelvis is right here. And then I come in and I might throw a line of action like this, indicating what the appendages are doing, okay? From this point, then I come in here, and then I block out in more detail. Now, my mannequin at home that I grew up, that I used, he has a large upper area like this, okay? So I'm basically going to draw that shape right now. Okay, now here's the cool thing that I could do. Sketch in the arms. Okay, now I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to look at my drawing here. Okay, now I'm just going to go by what I'm looking at, what my mannequin has. My mannequin has this upper torso like this. Okay. He has, if you look at him, he has a round sphere. Now, see this circle here? I'm going to draw that underneath here. Make sure my proportions are working out correctly. because attached to that then is this other circle that's in there. And then after that we come down, we have this sort of round pelvic attachment that's in here, okay? And then that round pelvic attachment is right there, okay? Then remember I sketched where the legs were going, so his legs foreshortening. So if you look at this, your mannequin usually has that round part underneath, okay? Which is fine. I could come here and sketch a little bit, but what I do is I cheat it a little bit sometimes. I know where it is, but now I'm gonna bring his leg. Now, you'll see on most mannequins, you can't bring your leg past a certain height. So we can't really get into this guy's pose. But what I can do is that I can distort him a little bit and I can pretend the leg's coming up. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to draw these shapes. I'm going to draw that cone. I'm going to draw that cylinder that exists. I'm going to draw the round part of the kneecap. I'm going to come back in here. Now where's my horizon line again? This character, it's up high. So I know if my horizon line's up high like that, I'm going to be able to look down on top of that other cylinder, and I know that his feet are going to be like so, okay? So now I can come back in, I can look on the other side. If this circle is there, I come to the other side, the other circle's over there. His knee is going to come out to about right here, okay? His kneecap's going to be about there. His other leg is going to come down about here, okay? I'm looking down on that because it's underneath my horizon line. I have part of the ankle there. But one thing I really do like about the mannequins is they give these really sort of stylized feet. And this is what they sort of look like, okay? Some of the mannequins have a pointed foot that looks like this. And then you have like the base round sphere that's like that. Some of them have changed a little bit where they put the round ball up on the top. And then you have the back of the mannequin's foot like that. Some of them have a little bit. This one here has a little bit of an indent in the side. So if I'm looking at the indent, it's like the heel. That's like the Achilles arch of the foot. And then you have this sort of front area. Mine has a little shaved off piece of wood like that on the front of the foot there. So what you could do if you want, remember we talked about cross-sectioning when we were drawing? If I put a cross-section through here, okay? Now, it allows me to see through it, but remember, here is about where the toes are. So I can bend it. So sometimes when I'm drawing my mannequin, I draw like this. I draw the back of the foot, and then I put an indentation there, and then I bend the toes. You see how I just sort of did that? It gives me that feeling that the toes are bending, and then the back of the foot comes up like that. Okay? I do the same thing with the hands. The mannequin's hands, look, I'm not even looking at my mannequin right now. I just know it from drawing it so many times. They're basically like this. They're they're like a sphere. It's rounded. And if I were to draw through this, it's a straight line here, and then it's a curved line that comes over like so. Okay? So I can do the same thing with the hands. If you're not good with hands, I'll do another lecture on that a little bit more in detail as we go forward. But you can stick with the base hand, which that's fine. So if you come in here and I look at my character's hands, okay, his hands were going all the way down to the base there, okay? So now I'm going to cheat a little bit. Now this is the great thing I love about drawing with proportions like this. I'm going to take his arm now, and I'm going to put his arm to here. I'm going to bring this, and I'm going to have a hand sitting inside here. So all I have to do is think about the proportions that exist on the mannequin. I know where that shoulder is. I know that I'm looking down in my horizon line, so I know that part of his cylinder shape is going to come to here. I know he's going to have an elbow, and then I know from right here to right there is going to be part of his forearm, okay? And then he's going to have another wrist joint, and then his hand. So his hand, basically, from a side view, is like this. Has the wrist joint, and his hand comes down to a point like so, right? And then it has that flat side to it. So it's basically like a ellipse that's been chopped in half and then chopped right there. You've gotten rid of all of that and put a knuckle right there. So all I have to do when I do a hand is I have to start with that round shape there, and then I come back over here and I just put down the base of those fingers like bending down. You see that? So what's great about this is for you guys, you're going to keep drawing this figure over and over and over till you get to the point where basically you have a full understanding of what is happening. Okay, let's go back to this character then. All right, let's take a look at her. I'm going to drop this down. I'm going to minimize her a little bit. So again, I don't care about the details. That's the biggest problem in figure drawing is a lot of artists get trained to render the details and they never finish the whole figure. They never do the feet. They never do the like parts of the hands. They never do the ears or the hair. They get caught into stuff, right? So first thing I'm going to do, what I prefer to do, remember I told you about, we established the horizon line. What's our next step then? Okay, make sure you're not sleeping on me. Okay, exactly, the head ball. So I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to look at this, and I'm just going to get in here. Oops, I'm drawing on the wrong layer. Let me put another layer above so I can go dark. So there, I'm going to throw that head ball shape, put part of that neck up in there. Okay, now I'm looking up underneath that part of that round shape, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to put that sphere that's in there for the neck. I'm looking under the head ball shape, and then there's pretty much like the center line of the character, and I'm looking up under that, right? Then after that, what's happening? I'm going to come over here. I'm going to look at the line of action. Now, she has a different pose, but part of her core line of action is coming with that leg going back that way, and then she pretty much is pretty symmetrical for her weight then. So what I'm going to do, I throw that line in real quick. I might look at a couple of her appendages, okay? A lot of times in figure drawing, when I'm drawing someone real quick, I do this thing. I have my own name for it. I call it tennis balls. Okay, this is what it is. After I get the line of action in, I throw a line in here, and I put a tennis ball like that, there and there. And then I throw another set of tennis balls there and there, and I know where the wrist is. See it? That's why I call it tennis balls, because they're like proportionally 3 different ball shapes that all connect, okay? What's important to me for you guys is that you then understand what's happening here in terms of her figure. That if you look at that shape, that she has a dedicated torso shape that's working like that right now, okay? After that, now, some of your mannequins, you'll notice, have some do, some don't. Who was it that bought the female mannequin? She's not here, right, Cynthia? So she bought a female mannequin that has bumps on the chest, okay? This mannequin has a flat chest. I guess that's the male mannequin, right? So sometimes what I like to do is I like to sketch in this little round area here because it reminds me that this line is coming, and whether male or female tend to have a flat chest. And the reason why we have a flat chest is because it's part of our sternum with our pectoralis muscles hitting our, basically our oblique muscles, your side oblique muscles with your, I can't talk right now, but with your stomach muscles in there, okay? So that's why I get that flatness. So I'm just going to draw that, then I come back here, and then I look at, I have a round sphere that holds all that sort of together, and I come back in here, and I'm going to draw the basic shape in there of part of her hips, like that. See that? Draw through the shape. I know what's on the other side there. So that's part of that character in proportion right there, okay? Then I come over here, and here's the great thing about this method. You will learn to foreshorten without even blinking, because you have to. So this leg now, I know that tennis ball or that kneecap, right? After that kneecap, I have the whole upper femur, which is this upper bone of your body, right? You have the whole quad section there. I know that that is going to be a large shape that is going to go back this way. Do you see that? And it's going to widen. Do you see that? That's what her leg is doing in a foreshortening pose. So remember when we were drawing shapes? So remember we talked about drawing if I have a cylinder and then I'm drawing it. Now, here I'm sort of looking down on my cylinder, right? But one of the things that happens in perspective is that if we have a large amount of convergence where something is pointing directly at us, we are now looking at our cylinder, and it can look like our cylinder is getting larger, but actually the leg cylinder is larger, because looking at a human leg, it tends to, even your mannequin has a light cut like this. Even your mannequin's leg does this. It goes from here, and it goes from a little bit wider, and then it tends to drop in because it's mimicking the quadricep muscles coming down to the kneecap, okay? So all I have to do is I come back over here. Now, sometimes cameras can lie a little bit, okay, that's common, but her other kneecap looks to be about here. I can come in here, I can sketch these other shapes. I can make sure that they're making sense. I know how they're connecting up, okay? All right, where I mentioned that thing about the feet. If I get that in there, I can draw her feet. I always like to put that bend mark because it reminds me of where the toes bend. That's huge for me. Okay, so you see that? I basically now have created this, and here's the cool thing, that arm's actually coming towards me a little bit. So I have to draw a cylinder like this, and then looking in this way, like so. Okay, so we're doing, I'm going to put these images online if you want to do them. I'm going to show you that site in just a second here. You can do a couple like this, but basically I don't want you to be relying on photos for too long. Okay, your goal is to be able to draw these characters as dedicated. Now, here's the difference when I take off, So I come in here, and then I could pretty much, I can throw the hand in here. Let's say, I might change it up a little bit. Let's say her shield came this way and then wrapped around. So there's a center line there on her hand. I might change the angle of the shield then. I could actually even cheat this and say, what if instead of the shield, this character is actually holding a giant sword? So maybe her hand's coming out this way, okay? And maybe, now I'm going to cheat a little bit because I've been doing a little bit more figure drawing, but I'm going to put a little, talk about that later when I get to hands. So I'm going to put part of her hand in here with a knuckle that's wrapping over for a thumb, and then I can come in here and say, hey, this character she has a sword that's in here, like so. And then maybe she's, so on. So I can keep doing that out of my head. The benefit for me is I don't have to stage anymore. I can draw shapes out of my head, and I could rotate them, understanding my horizon line and following a couple other little steps, okay? So I want you guys to basically take your mannequin, pose them all over, draw them over and over and over. And remember, we usually do in this class, we do about 5 pages, right, a week, okay? So I want to give you time to work the rest of this week, and then you work a little bit at home. So that's 5 pages. Each page should have a minimum of 5 mannequins on there. You don't have to draw your mannequin super large because this isn't figure drawing. I think I just woke Dennis up. He popped up. They can be smaller, okay? You can be a little bit smaller. I prefer to draw some of my mannequin sketches like about 3 or 4 inches tall and just do a whole line on a page. You learn more from that, okay? But what I want to make sure that you do is I want to make sure that you don't turn around and you don't start doing these huge mannequins. You're not thinking about the horizon line and all those placements and all those issues, okay? Those are really, really imperative. So really quickly, here's a great site for you to draw from. If you go to Google, okay, and you come over here and type in Pixel Lovely. So if you type in Pixel Lovely, it was changed recently. It used to be called Pixel Lovely. Now it's Line of Action. I remember it was changed. Line of Action is more fitting, I assume. Okay, so here's what's great about this site. It has figure drawing, it has hands, faces, animals. So we want figure, okay? We select figure section. We wait for the school's Wi-Fi, which operates at the speed of Wi-Fi from 1999. Okay, there it is. All right, hold on a minute. Come on. Sorry, guys. Know what's going on today. Okay, this is the page we're waiting for here. This is what's awesome. I tell it what I want. Do I want nude models or what we call clothed models, decent models? Okay, so let's say, it doesn't matter to me. Let's say I want nude models. I want both genders, male and female. What kind of session do I want? Do I want them all to be the same length? I want class mode, right? Then here's what's cool. I want you guys to give yourself a time limit. Bingo, 5 minutes to draw a pose. And then we hit this and we say, get drawing. Guess what? Come on, load. There it is. There's pose number 1. I got 5 minutes. Number 1, where's my horizon line? Start with go to the head ball, put in the upper chest, put in the lower pelvic area, and then do the limbs. Pose 2. Okay? So what's cool about this site is they have, now I'm fast forwarding through it, they have all these awesome figures up here, all these poses. So when students go, well, I can't go to figure drawing, I don't know what to draw, blah, 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 blah. It's all up here, okay? then you can sit and draw. I can put it at 30-second intervals. I can do gestures. I can do 5-minute poses. Your goal is to be able to replicate the proportions correctly via what you're seeing. What you are really doing, folks, is this is loading forever, is that you are strengthening your cognitive learning abilities. You're strengthening your ability to look at something and embellish it onto paper and translate that form. By doing this, you're going to be able to strengthen your ability to draw the human figure out of your brain at any point or time without a model if you follow this method. If you start getting into detail and you start rendering cloth and you start adding swords and turn them into Japanese sword fighters, when that's not what we're doing right now, it's not character design. We're drawing proportions and form of the human figure, understanding how it exists on a perspective plane. Okay? And by the way, Pixel Lovely is just a beautiful site. So you can do this with your mannequin separately and pose your mannequin all around you, or you can go to Pixel Lovely and you can just start putting up images and give yourself 2 minutes between each pose and draw. The one thing you don't want to do, look at this. Where's the horizon line up here? It's up high. See how we're looking down on the model? It's up high. We can see on top of her head. We can see on her shoulders, on the legs, okay? Some of the, most of this stuff here on Pixel Lovely is pretty good, okay? Some of the pictures sometimes are a little questionable, but they've added a lot to it. And it's a free site. I mean, it's a beautiful site. By the way, I mentioned about, and this is another lecture I was going to prepare for you later. Here's the gentleman that I learned a ton from right here, okay, with figure drawing. And I still need to go back and visit his stuff. This is George Bridgman. Here, you can buy this book. It's $8.87. It's still cheap. Okay, it is a beautiful book. Okay, Bridgman was fantastic. This is sort of the next step for you. What Bridgman does that's really fantastic, and I have some of his books I can bring in. There's a whole bunch here, heads and hands and everything. This is what I drew from many moons ago, right? See the proportions in there of the mannequin in there? But then he goes into those and then he starts carving. George Bridgman taught me more about understanding how to draw. And he taught me that, when we talked about the additive and subtractive methods of drawing, that came from this guy right here. Because he was doing that. He was doing additive and subtractive. He was adding on limbs. He's carving into shapes. He's rounding forms. Okay? He's taking something you see that right there? Look at that twist between the waist. Look, there's the head. There's part of the line of action. There's the upper torso. There's the lower torso. Right? That's all the construction elements. Everything else from there goes into wedgy block of details. It allows you to understand what's happening in the form. Okay? Any questions then? Before we go forward, I want to let you guys draw for the rest of class. Okay? I highly recommend, for $8, you can't go wrong getting that book. I have some images from it. I wouldn't mind maybe in the next week or two, maybe we can put up images and draw some of those as well in class. But pretty much, this isn't an anatomy class. This is a basic drawing for entertainment arts. The most important thing that I want to stress on you guys from the end of today's lecture is that we look at the human figure differently. We don't have to draw it in a 3 or 4 hour pose. I don't want you to become reliant on needing a model. What I want you to do is understand the core shapes of that mannequin, understand how to establish her horizon line, and how to build the character out of what you are looking at from your what you're envisioning with your imagination. Okay? Your goal is basically, that's why I had to show you Brian's work in the beginning of this lecture, is I wanted you to understand that in order to do this right there, sometimes you don't need a model. I don't need a model when I do that in my sketchbook. I start rotating and drawing stuff at multiple angles because it's fun and I can do it. Because I understand perspective, I understand proportion, and I understand how to turn shapes at multiple angles of view. That's it, okay? All right, have fun drawing, guys. Talk to you soon.